This is Jacob with J&D Photography, and you are experiencing Sparking Fire, the podcast for innovative artists and entrepreneurs. I have with me today as a special guest, Craig with Gearbox Adventures. Craig, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I kind of want to start off by saying, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So, married to my beautiful wife, Lauren. I'm 31 years old, grew up in the Birmingham area. I've been here most of my life, other than college and a few other things abroad, but, love the camper van thing, and so that's kind of my day-to-day stuff. I build and rent camper vans for people and going on road trips or adventures with their families. And then I'm also an audio engineer part-time at Church of the Highlands. So those are my two big things.
Oh, wonderful. So tell me about Gearbox Adventures. How did you come up with the idea and what started that whole thing?
So, man, there's so many different stories, when you have something, when you decide to make a big life change like this, it's usually not just one thing that sparks it. But I fell in love with camper vans and the camper van lifestyle really through Instagram. I followed this guy, I believe his name's Brett Norris. He's a professional baseball player and lives in a Volkswagen bus. And he's I would assume a millionaire, super athletic, but lives in a bus. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Travels around just adventuring and surfing, and started following his account and fell in love with it, and just saw how convenient it was to travel in a camper van, because you can park where you play, and you can sleep. If you get hungry, you pull over and cook lunch or dinner, or if you're tired, you pull over and take a nap or whatever. And you can even park at the trailhead, so you're the first person there in the morning or whatever. So it's just super convenient. And when I realized that there's so many people that would really enjoy being outdoors, that maybe aren't ready to tent camp, I felt like this was an incredible way to kind of bridge that gap between taking people that don't normally camp, but this is a great in-between.
Yeah, I totally agree. We were talking earlier, and we actually have a few mutual friends who are totally into the van life.
Yeah.
And it really is just a great way for people to kind of get outdoors without having to lug a lot of tent and camping equipment along.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so easy to just set up and tear down. I mean, on this van, the only thing really that you're doing is the awning, and it's like a 2-minute process. So you decide you want to move camp, you just roll it up and drive off. There's no poles and tarps and wrapping things up, and it's just quick and easy.
So tell me about your first camper van that you ever built. What was it for you, or was it for the business?
A little bit of both. So, I mean, it was for the business for sure, but the goal was that I would get to use it as well, and still that's the goal, that when the vans aren't being rented out, that my family and I and friends and I can go adventure. We've got a trip coming up in March where a couple that we're friends with, they're going to take one van, we're taking one van, and we're going to go on a trip together up to the mountains and just spend a week in Asheville and kind of touring around the Carolinas. So it's great to get to go out.
So you built your first van kind of for business and pleasure. Talk about the process of building your first van.
Gosh, so building a camper van is, it can be, it's almost like, I don't want to say it's like building a house because there aren't as many regulations, but it took a lot of research. I spent months and months just reading blog after blog, watching YouTube videos, hundreds of YouTube videos, and just trial and error. I made a lot of mistakes, and there are things, every van that I build, I learned something new. Every van that goes into the rental fleet, I learned something that I wish I would have done a little differently. And so every van that we build is just getting better and better and better. And, I started out, my first van was pretty much just materials from Lowe's or Home Depot. I mean, very stuff that you would use in your home. And as I've progressed, I've learned a lot, and certain materials that you use in your home don't work that great in vans. And so just progressed and learned, and always watching other companies and seeing how they do things, and just the durability of fabrics and things. It's a process, but it's fun. It's kind of the challenge of it.
So how many cars do you have in your fleet right now?
So right now we have 2. We had 3 at the beginning of this year, and what we do when our vans get past a certain age or a certain mileage is we sell them, because we want to keep our fleet new and fresh, and we want to make sure that stuff that's in the fleet is low mileage and safe to drive. So we always sell vans when they get high mileage. And so right now we've got 2, and then the plan is to add to the fleet. Probably in the next month or 2, we'll be buying another van to build out and have it ready for spring. Because spring and summer is the busy season.
Wonderful. So who would you say is your ideal customer for Gearbox Adventures?
I mean, honestly, we just love the customers that I get most excited about are ones that maybe aren't the most outdoorsy, but they're like getting into it or getting excited about it. I would say the majority of our customers are young families. They're, outdoorsy and outgoing, back maybe in college, and then they had kids and got a job and got busy and kind of lost touch with going outside and adventuring and road trips. And most of them are getting back to, they're realizing how much they miss it, and they're getting back to it. And so young families are the majority of our customers, but just anybody that wants to get outside. I mean, it doesn't matter how old or young you are or what you're into. It's just getting out in nature is healing, and being active and sweating, and just it's just fun. It's good for you.
I totally agree. Like one of my respites for my photography work is actually like coming out to Oak Mountain or Red Mountain.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I love about Birmingham so much is, if you go anywhere within like a 15-mile drive, you can come to like an amazing park. And usually it's very affordable to enter, like maybe a $5 fee or free.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, but even beyond the Birmingham area, there are several places outside of Birmingham. There's Nokalula Falls. Mm-hmm. There is, DeSoto Caverns, just all sorts of like really cool places. So talk about like the range that your cars can travel and like how far you allow your customers to drive.
So we don't really have any limits. We allow customers to go as far as they want in the U.S. or Canada. And so we've had vans in Washington State. We've had vans all the way down to Miami and Boca Raton, Michigan, the national parks out west. There really aren't any limits. I mean, it just is up to how much time you have and, what you want to do. So we have a lot of people that come here to Oak Mountain State Park and just spend a weekend with their son or daughter and just have like a fun birthday weekend. And then we have people that carry, a group of friends out to the Grand Canyon and may even camp down in the Grand Canyon. And the van's just an awesome way to get there.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the lifestyle of the van life. Can you talk to me about you talked a little bit about your discovery of the van life. Talk to me about like how people have discovered this way of living and exploring America.
Yeah. So, honestly, we have so many people that I always tell people when they come back from a road trip, they'll be talking about how much fun they had and how awesome it was and how convenient it was. And I always tell them, hey, I'm sorry, I hate to tell you, but you're never going to be able to road trip in a car again, because once you road trip in a camper van, it's really hard to go back to road tripping in a car. And, so we help a lot of people discover that they want to own their own van or they want to live in a van. And I feel like the majority of people are finding it online. I mean, we live in a information saturated world right now. And, with Instagram and social media and that kind of thing, it's everywhere. And, the South is growing a lot in the camper van culture. In the last few years, it's something that's grown a lot. So word of mouth as well, I think.
Yeah. So what you just said kind of calls to mind a story that I heard once. There's a famous photographer, his name is Joe McNally. Mm-hmm. And when he was growing up in the early 60s and 70s, his family would take like these epic road trips from, I think, the Northeast or something like that. Uh-huh. And his dad would drive from, I think it was Michigan, all the way to like Yosemite.
Wow.
And he would eat like mayo sandwiches the whole way. And so like there's been like a long history of American culture of like road tripping. And I think your company is like a great step in like the next direction.
Absolutely.
So like, what do you think is like the future of like, van life and road tripping?
Gosh, I see more and more people, I think that as a nation, we're realizing that we used to live simply, and it continued to get more and more complicated. The longer, every generation has been a little more complicated, whether it's technology, transportation, jobs, stress, work, time management, everything is just more and more complicated. And I think we're getting to this point where we're starting to swing back, and people are realizing, hey, we've gone too far, and we need to like simplify and de-stress and relax and eat better and be active and travel more and spend time with our families and get off of our phones, and so I just see it just becoming more and more of a thing. I mean, it's just such a simple life. I think that people living in vans is going to just continue to increase. It used to be something that was made fun of, living in a van down by the river. It was like not the life you wanted. It was the creepy person.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of the millennial dream. I mean, it's I just see it going in that direction. And even with electric vehicles, and once they start coming out with electric vans, I think it's just going to be even better for the world. And I think there are a lot of benefits.
Absolutely. And I think that there's a very common theme in what you were saying, that people want to have a more authentic life. Mm-hmm. I think with the advent of social media, there's a lot of structuring of your life on these platforms. And I think people want to kind of like reconnect with something that's real.
Absolutely.
And so like coming out into nature where it's just like, there's nothing like created out here. It was just grown. Yeah. And so what you see is what you get. Yeah. And when you come out here in a camper van or on your own, you get to experience something real. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's something built into our DNA, our nature, our being that we find rest and healing in nature. And it may take a while for you to find that because we're so far removed from it. But it's like once you discover how healing and just relaxing and just detoxifying nature can be, it's hard to go back to sitting in your living room all weekend and watching TV.
Yeah. Now, obviously, there's a very tight-knit community around the van life. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about some of the friendships you've made through connecting through vans.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the Southeast is kind of in my opinion, it's one of the last places to kind of grow in van life. It started in Europe and has slowly made its way towards out west in the U.S., California, and then it's slowly trickling down to the Southeast. And so it's amazing when you travel in a van, you don't realize how many other people are traveling in vans until you get to these campgrounds, and they're just everywhere. There's an incredible van life rally in Asheville that we go to every year for the last 2 years, and hundreds and hundreds of camper vans and just incredible people, just some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. It's hard to meet a mean person that's out adventuring and camping. Most of those people are pretty laid back people and just love everybody and love life. And so I think that there's a lot of great stories. And then, I've met people locally online, and I'll be down at Pepper Place Market with the van, just meeting people, and so it never fails. Someone will come up and say, hey, I built my own van. Like, it's right down the road. Let me pull it up and show it to you. And get to hang out with people, and it's a great connector. It's like when you maybe you cycle or you rock climb or whatever, and when you meet other people that rock climb, like, you may not know that person at all, but you kind of have this, like, you click because you're like, okay, you rock climb, I rock climb. It's like, oh, you own a camper van, I own a camper van. And so it's just like it's a really cool community to connect with, and it's once you realize that people are involved in that, or even maybe you don't own a van, but you traveled in one in Iceland or whatever. I meet a lot of great people like that way.
So what would you say to someone who wants to like get into like the van life?
Man, it's super simple. If you want to go full time, I wouldn't say that's simple. I would say that is a weaning process, simplifying, and most of us have way too much stuff to carry in a van, unless you're going to get a really big van. So I have a friend, Amy, who she is working towards. She lives in her van full time, but she lives on some property that her family owns, and so she's not traveling yet. But she was in a house, bought a van, slowly started building it out, and has slowly transitioned. One night a week, 2-3 nights a week, and now she's full time in her van, but she still has the security of being close to home if there is some type of emergency. And then once she's able to get to a point where she's ready, she's going to start traveling the U.S., probably start local and work her way up. But I think it really just depends on your personality. I mean, I'm the kind of person who just likes to just jump into things without asking questions a lot. But some people need that security. So, for me, I think, if I had no one else to think about, and I was just going to be about Craig, I could probably jump in a van today and just go live, So it really just depends.
So as a final word, like what would you say about Gearbox Adventures and yourself?
So, I would honestly just say that our goal more than anything is to help people connect with their families, their loved ones, their friends, make memories, have adventure. This life is too short. It's going to be gone before you know it, and there are no do-overs. And so I just would encourage people to slow down and just get out and breathe in the fresh air and soak up the sun and, make memories, whether that's with Gearbox or not. But that's what we're here for, is to help people discover that.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
And this has been Jacob De La Rosa with Sparking Fire, the podcast for innovative artists and entrepreneurs. I will see you next Sunday.
Thank you.